Rabbi Shlomo Buxbaum.
That is correct still. You still got my name right. Is also the template to understand everything in the Bria, everything in the cosmos, everything in creation.
What would be the importance of an individual knowing their one of their four elements, or how they connect with it?
I want to take a step back and I want to point out
A fire. Let me get my passion back on. Let me keep on going to what speaks to
you
me.
know how to fill that element.
Exactly.
This is Mo,
And this is Aryeh,
and you're listening to
the Relatable Podcast. Let's do it.
Rabbi Shlomo Buxbaum, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. Welcome in.
that is correct still. You still got my name right.
I like
We're
that.
putting the blooper first. Yalla, let's get started.
All right.
Yeah, sir. Shlomo, I actually met Rabbi Shlomo this past Shabbos at a surprise kiddush. Me my way there, woke up a little late and was not so interested in going. My dad pushed me to go. Sat right next to Rabbi Shlomo.
Hashem brings Yidden together,
It was
right?
unreal.
Isn't
From
it?
the second I sat down, I literally just woke up and I was not down to speak to anybody.
Let's go.
Like, what's your name? Ari Silva. Immediately felt the connection,
That's
and thank God. Thank you for coming.
Yerushalayim is Ir Shechubra Lo Yachdav. It just brings people together. So that's it. And who knows? Maybe it was for this. Maybe
Yeah.
it was for the audience. Who knows?
Exactly. Beautiful. And
Shalom Aleichem. I just met Rav Mo.
yes,
Like
what a
10
connection. What a
minutes ago.
shidduch. I love it. So we're just going to hop straight into you, amongst many other things that you do. You do phenomenal work in outreach and different organizations that you have, which we could touch on for part two. For now, I want to keep it. You have a very famous book that my sister went to your wife's camp, I believe. It's called the Feinof
No, that's right.
Travel Camp.
Yes.
And besides for the phenomenal experience she had, she was going on and on about this book that you wrote. She sat us down. She went through the different lists. What's your primary element? So we got all that. But I just want to give you the floor for the first few minutes to describe to the audience, to the listeners, what is the idea of the four elements? How do you bring it down to the practicality of each and every single person?
Okay, I'll do my best to do it quickly and to leave time that we could really dig in, depending on where you guys want to
Beautiful.
dig in. So I'm the author of 2 books on this topic of the 2.5 books on this topic of the 4 elements. But as Hashem, a third one will come out. The first book is called The 4 Elements of an Empowered Life. The second book is called The 4 Elements of Inner Freedom. It focuses on different things, but the concept of the 4 elements is to give us an understanding of who we are, how we operate, what's our inner wiring, and to take Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, Machshava, Pnimius Torah. Your audience, I could speak like that, right?
Yeah, let's also try to
Pnimius
translate in
Torah.
English.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I love
the
that.
depth of Torah,
Yeah.
Kabbalistic mystical wisdom, which is also the template. This is the bottom line. Kabbalistic wisdom is also the template to understand everything in the Bria, everything in the cosmos, everything in creation, because they parallel each other. Hashem creates the world with patterns. And when you're learning about Kabbalah, you're learning about Jewish mysticism, you're learning about the spiritual realms, but you're also learning about your inner world, because your inner world reflects the spiritual realm. So you could learn Kabbalah purely as some sort of esoteric wisdom, but you could learn it in a more practical way to try to understand yourself. So many Kabbalistic ideas will also help us understand. Remember also that human beings are created in the image of God, B'Tselem Elokim. So therefore, again, if we understand what that means spiritually, Kabbalistically, we could also understand our inner world. So the basic premise of the 4 elements is that that everything in creation follows a template of these elements. So when you think about the 4 elements, you probably think of maybe, depending on your audience, they might think of ancient Greek philosophy or Ayurvedic Chinese medicine or the Avatar series or Disney's Elemental, right? Whatever it is. But we're familiar with the concept of the 4 elements as being earth, water, wind, and fire. Now, what are these? So ancient wisdom said that these are the building blocks of creation. Well, now we know we have a whole periodic table. But what that does mean is that all of creation can be broken down into earth, that's solid, right? Solid matter. Liquid, right here, it's good we have the props, right?
Yeah, man.
Liquid
Let me
is...
zoom in on the camera.
What? Exactly. Liquid, for those who don't know what liquid. And then we have wind, which is just purely the gas in the air. And then elemental fire, which is like pure energy, pure plasma. So that means that existence, all of matter can exist on multiple levels. The same matter can be earth, water, wind, or fire. Well, that's true with all of us as well. We have different levels of our own nefesh. Nefesh is our inner world. Nefesh is our inner life force. And our nefesh exists in earth element. That's the you and I that are sitting here together, right? This is my earth element. But it's also my consciousness. I'm aware of myself as a mortal being. Hashem creates man afar min ha'adama. We're mortal beings, right? We exist over here on this material, and therefore we're constantly aware of the fact that, you know what? Number one, I have a limited time in this world. Ela fartashav, right? You're going to return to the dirt. I'm a mortal being, and I have to eat. I need safety. I need security. I need to pay the bills. That is earth element. That's the earth part of us. But we're also emotional beings. That's the water part of us. And why these elements are like that, it might be a little bit too much for now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of water element is we're emotional beings. You're not happy just because you know, okay, you have a good job, you can pay the bills. Are you suddenly happy? Not at all. It's just beginning. Now you need emotion, you need love, you need pleasure. If you don't have that, you're in danger of falling into a dark place, of being depressed. You know what people do when they feel isolated, when they feel lonely? They indulge. They need the dopamine hit from something else, right? I'll generalize now, and I hope that no one in your audience will take offense. But the example for a woman might be a woman who goes through a terrible breakup and she's feeling lonely and she binge eats ice cream. And I was nervous when I spoke in the seminary the other day, so I stopped short, and they all filled it in for me. So I know I can say it on this.
Nice.
They binge eat for
Hashtag relatable.
Fine. And then again, for a young man or for an older man, if he feels that loneliness, he might get into pornography or other sort of indulgences. So the water element is the dance between those two. The wind element is our intellect. Okay, with the intellect. So again, we now rise above. We have our basic needs met. That's our earth element is taken care of. We're having our emotional needs somewhat fulfilled. That's water element taken care of. Then there's the wind element, our intellect. We're curious. We're intellectual people. We have curiosity. We're searchers. We want to search for the truth. We want to learn. We want meaning. We want answers. What's this whole game of life all about? So that's the wind element. And now there's a dance, because the wind element is searching, but you can be searching for the truth. You can be searching in the wrong places. You can be in the right place and be swayed to go to lo sasuru achri levavchem yachri nechem. You can be distracted. That's all connected to the wind element. Then the fire element, above earth element, above being taken care of, and above water element, emotions, above wind element, intellect, we have a fire element. And that's the part of us that wants to self-actualize. We want to be something. We want to be great. We want to rise to the top like fire rises to the top. That gets into like the core of who we are. And when we don't have that, we can be pulled towards ego. We could be pulled towards becoming overly materialistic. Maybe if I don't feel good about myself, maybe if if I'm cool enough, if I walk with enough, swagger, if I have an expensive enough watch or a nice car or something like that, if I'm making enough money, right? Then maybe people will actually think that I'm great, but that's not really what we want. We want authentic greatness. That's fire. So those are the four elements. What I spoke about a little bit in the seminary is realizing that different people are wired differently as to which element we're the most part of, but we're the most connected to.
What does that mean?
So we can go into that. I wanted to give you and your audience
Beautiful.
a quick moment to process, and me a quick moment to take a sip
Beautiful.
of water.
After you've done your sip, Rabbi, I want to ask just quickly, do you think we could circle over each of the elements and put it into a sentence, just like earth this or water that?
Absolutely. Earth element is our physical consciousness. And therefore, the earth element is about feeling stable and secure, and that I have my place in this world as a mortal human being. That's earth element.
Beautiful.
Water element is the element of emotion. And it's the part of us that dances, that looks for pleasure and connection in either a good way, which is deep connection, deep fulfilling relationships, or indulging. The wind element is the element of intellect, and that's the one that has the dance between searching for truth versus falsehood, between any sort of self-expression. And the fire element is the part of us that wants to reach towards greatness and self-actualize.
It's beautiful. That's an amazing overview. Wow.
Yeah.
I know that it was said a little
blown away.
fast, but again,
I'm re-listening to this podcast 10 times just to sit on that.
That was really
But-
wild.
All right, I'm sorry to take away from your
we can
question.
go deeper into each one.
Yeah, so I just want to dive in. I'm very into the 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman.
Okay.
For sure you're familiar with that. And the basic idea is that everybody has all 5 love languages: gift giving, words of affirmation, quality time, so on and so forth, acts of services. Every person has 1 or 2 primary acts of love, right? So for example, mine is like words of affirmation, quality time. Obviously, if you give me a gift, I'll be thrilled.
But it
However,
doesn't hit the
quality
same.
exactly. So on the 4 elements, is it an equilibrium across the board? Or are some people more inclined to one of their certain elements? How does that work?
So obviously, the 4 parts that I just said are parts of us that we all have. And that's certainly true. I like to open up my talks just for the fun of it and ask a group of people, what element do you feel the most, even before I give my whole spiel that I just said. I like to open up when I spoke to the girls on Sunday, right? I open up and I say, if you had to connect yourself to an element, which element would you connect yourself to? And it's
Before they have
interesting.
any knowledge of what
Before
the
they
elements.
even know.
Wow.
Because people naturally feel something, and sometimes they hit it exactly on the nail and sometimes they don't. But it's interesting just to start interacting and see which one of these things you might naturally feel more.
Your gut
Exactly,
reaction.
something says it.
Intuition.
And even then, it just gets people to start thinking, the connection between fire and anger. That's something that, like, you ever watch a cartoon, right? The cartoon character gets upset, fire's coming, exactly. Fire's coming out of it. So we naturally, this is not a chiddush. This is not
Right.
such a novel idea. People are used to that. There's a certain feeling that we get around water. There's a certain feeling. So we're some of this is somewhat intuitive. So people naturally do feel it. So therefore, there is some value in trying to identify with one element. The best way really to play with the elements is to put all 4 of them down and to kind of rate yourself, give yourself a scale. Which ones do you feel, assuming you have all 4, but which ones do you feel you're most connected to? And can you identify primary element? Can you identify a secondary element, a third, and a fourth, and give it that order? And that's really very, very valuable because it'll teach you a lot about yourself, and it'll also teach you a lot about other people. So people who know the 4 elements will develop this language and say about a person, oh, that person, they're a real earth element, I can say about myself, like, I'm a real wind element person. Now, it doesn't mean that I only have the wind element, but I feel very much drawn to a wind element, and I can tell. And as a wind element person, when I look around the room, I can usually pick out the wind elements.
Nice.
That's very interesting.
Well, does it shift? Meaning in certain periods of time, I think a person will naturally gravitate more towards, I keep on using the 5 love languages as a sidebar. So parenthetically, if somebody is craving words of affirmation, specifically in a certain, let's say while they're abroad, even though normally it's quality time, do you think that the elements could shift also depending on where a person's holding in life?
That's a great question. It could be, it's possible, it's hard to say. I would imagine that one's primary element will always stay the same. The way I think the way I would envision it is probably your primary element will always stay the same. I was always a wind element. By nature, I'm a free-spirited sort of person. I'm a curious person, and it's my nature. We were discussing some music before we turned the camera on, and Ari was surprised because he was expecting very, very,
More generic.
Exactly. And the last thing, even though I'm a born and bred yeshiva guy, and I don't want to say I play the part well. I feel very much connected to that. I've never felt that I need to present myself looking like schlepping nachas. No offense, schlepping nachas. I love the look, right? But it wasn't the way. But in terms of my interests and the things that I'm drawn to, I'm a more free-spirited person. That's something that's really deeply hardwired into who I am. Are there going to be times that I'll have more fire versus less fire, that I'll feel more earth? Definitely, 100%. When we're talking about which elements might be more prevalent in my life because of the situation that I'm going through, certainly there's going to be these fluctuations.
Wow. Number one, I love the word choice of free-spirited because I think that the half an hour that I just got to meet you, that it's like a perfect description of how your image is being portrayed. So very interesting. As well, I just out of curiosity, what would be the importance of an individual knowing their
One of their four
elements, or how they connect with it.
Sure. So, one of the things when I'm teaching about the four elements, one of the things that I like to say, that I like to illustrate, is you can tell, number one, you can tell people by the work that they do, assuming they're in a job that fits towards them. You could tell a person by how they engage socially and what excites them, like socially. And then you can also tell, I would say, when a person's true colors come out, like when they're on vacation, So if you think about, let's just say an earth element. Let's
Sure.
take an earth element person. Okay, so remember, earth element people, what are they? They're about stability, they're about security. They're very, very down to earth.
But I just want to ask a question on that, because I feel like I deeply crave that, but I don't have that at all. So does that mean I'm not an earth element, or does it mean I am an earth element?
Well, you crave it
You crave what? Structure? Stability?
Structure, stability,
let me share
balance.
with you. Well, why don't you tell me? Here's what I see as an earth element person. So number one, an earth element person, professionally, an earth element person will usually thrive in a job as like a COO, not a CEO, a COO. If you ever go to like a business or an organization and they have that one guy who's just rolling up his
on top
sleeves,
of it.
Exactly. It's the one. You guys are in a Dira, you're in an apartment, or you're in a dorm.
Caravans.
Dorm.
Okay.
Same thing.
So let's say, right? Typically, when you're in a dorm with a bunch of guys, so you have that one guy who just becomes the one, like, he's taking care to make sure the bills are paid. He's the mommy, exactly. Yeah. Usually, that's an earth element personality, and this person's going to make a great COO. And this person is going to be the one on vacation, right? When, like, you're going to want to bring this guy along because he's going to make sure he's going to have that
He's
whole
renting the
checklist.
cars, Airbnb, and he's got your food.
Husband down pat,
Exactly.
every dollar, every penny.
Exactly. The water element one is just the one, like, he's going to connect. He wants to chill with his guys, right? And he wants to have, maybe he's the one that wants to have really good food. And guys, I'm just envisioning, like, we're all going to sit around and the
water.
food's going to be great and we're going to chill together and it's going to
love
be
that.
awesome. And maybe we'll be in the hot tub, we'll have cigar, whatever it is.
Nice.
A wind element is always looking. Wind elements question everything, right? So again, they're always searching, and they'll probably want to go to someplace new. Maybe they'll want to go to someplace. A wind element, they say Tzvat is the city of wind, right? Each one. So Tzvat, the wind element guy is the guy who shows up in Eretz Yisrael, in Israel, with dreadlocks and a guitar on his back, and leaves a Breslover chassid, right?
Yes.
That's the wind element guy. Wind element people are nerds and hippies. Right, because that's it. They're searching, right?
Nice.
And hippies are just cool nerds, right?
Yeah.
I just want to point out that hippies, because you identified as more as a wind, you're talking about like more internal than external.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly,
Meaning like a hippie internally, like you mentioned yourself, you're free spirit, even though you're wearing a white shirt. And, right.
Exactly. This was a conscious decision to be like, you know what, for my life, for everything, right?
You're not gonna have dreadlocks.
Exactly. This is my. I will live vicariously through those that have dreadlocks, but it's not for me, right? Again, it's not. In order for me to thrive in the capacity that I need to thrive, this is the tzura that I choose to stick to. But internally, and by the way, free-spirited people always have somewhat of an existential crisis in their life, because we are in so many different places, and therefore, like, I have a lot of conversations with guys like yourself who are like, oh, maybe I should be this, and maybe I should be this, and this. There is a certain internal tension that happens with a wind element person, because that's it. They're always searching. And the fire element person, these are the people that are going to be the CEOs. They're going to start things. They're going to start organizations. They want to be the top. They want to be managing people. And they want to take risks. So the same risk that they might take with their money to do a big investment, they might also want to take a risk and jump out of an airplane or, do something crazy.
Wow.
So to answer your question, your original question, is that the value of knowing these elements is that it's good to know yourself. The more that you understand yourself, the difference between you said your water element, often water element people could be people pleasers. They don't want people to be upset. They want everybody to be happy. I really have to go to the social function because, they're really expecting me to go.
That fits.
And the wind element person is like, Why do I have to go? Like,
Yeah.
This doesn't make like
Said who?
This doesn't make exactly said who, right?
Nice.
Exactly. They're more the wind element person might be more of an anarchist because if it doesn't resonate, if it doesn't make sense to them, they might not feel compelled to do it.
Wow.
So we're constantly doing, we're constantly interacting with the world based on which elements are alive inside of us.
That's very cool. It makes complete sense. I guess another question to add on top of the original question would be, after knowing your elements and what you struggle with, what you don't struggle with, what your strengths are, your whatever. I don't know how I'm wearing this. Cut that part out 'cause it sounds awkward. But after you know your strengths and your weaknesses, and you understand the elements of yourself, how is that going to affect your life? Meaning, I guess if I understand I'm strong in earth or I'm strong in fire, then how am I going to utilize that to push myself farther in career and life and relationships, connections, and
Beautiful
so on and
question.
so forth?
Beautiful question. I want to take a step back and I want to point out, I didn't mention this earlier because I didn't want to go so heavy on my introduction, but all of this is in Torah. And the reason that there's 2 books on it is because the suggestion of both of these books is that the first 2 books of the Torah, Sefer Bereshis, Sefer Shemos, are telling the story of the 4 elements.
Really? Wow.
The first book, which is based on Sefer Bereshis, shows that the whole beginning of Sefer Bereshis, there's a pattern unfolding. Cain kills Hevel, Cain kills Abel. Generation of the flood, generation of Dor HaFlag, of the Tower of Babel, Sodom. And now comes along Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov and the Shvatim. And are these all separate stories? Or somehow was the work of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and the Shvatim, were they somehow coming to be misaking, to rectify some of the early flaws of humanity? With the second book, Sefer Shemos, and somehow or another the entire Geula, redemption, revolves around Arba Leshono Shel Geula, 4 terms of redemption. So the premise of both of these books is that both of these stories, Sefer Bereshis is one book. It's a book about the 4 elements. It's a book about 4 struggles that were introduced to humanity and 4 personalities that were able to come and rectify certain midos. And the same thing with Mitzrayim, Egypt. It represents 4 struggles, and there's 4 stages to the Exodus. So much of the struggles that we have connect back to this. So let's just say, that's a long way to answer your question. What is this going to do? What is this going to help me? If I understand, let's say I understand. Let's talk about the earth element. Could we talk some Torah?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay.
If you could just translate, I'll say yeah.
Okay. Cain kills Abel. Let's take a little bit of a closer look at Cain. Who is Cain? What is his personality? What do we know about him? How is he introduced in the Torah? Cain haya oved adama. Cain was someone who worked the ground.
Nice.
What is he? He's earth element. He's a personification. He's an archetype of the work element. And what does Hashem tell him? Lama chara lach v'lama naflu panecha. Why are you so frustrated? Why are you so upset? An earth element person, they're very serious about life. They're very serious about things going
Structure
right.
and-
Exactly.
Nice.
And they could
Rigidity.
get very stressed. Lama chara, chill out. Lama chara lach v'lama naflu panecha. Don't get
Wow.
depression comes from earth element as well. Because
Yeah.
what's depression? Depression is an outgrowth of us being mortal human beings.
Yeah.
So that is Cain. So therefore, he's a constricted personality. Avram Avinu, our first patriarch, is the only patriarch, or the only one of the Avos that says, Anochi Afar Va'efer. And what's his personality? Avram Avinu is zrizos, alacrity, energy, enthusiasm. What is he? Chesed. He's always taking care of people.
Yeah.
That's also earth element, but that's earth element the other way. That's element element turned over. That's earth element
Whoa.
saying, you know what?
Yeah,
I want to be a nurturing person, but I have other people in my world. Cain pushes people away. Avram Avinu takes people in. It's like this with every element. So you go through life and you're finding yourself suddenly getting into a dark place, and you're finding that for some reason you feel you've been more indulgent lately. You feel like you have less control over your Yetzer Hara, right? You feel like you're falling more into temptation. So as a yeshiva guy, unfortunately, we can get certain messaging that like there's something wrong with you and how can
Guilt,
you let your
shame.
Yetzirah, exactly, guilt, shame. But if you realize, one second, that's water element. Water element, what's it really looking for? It's looking for love. It's looking for connection.
Oh, I love this.
The Dor HaMabul, the generation of the flood, right? It says, what was their big sin? It says, how did it all begin? With lust, with taiva. It says, and however you understand it, first it says that the Bnei Elokim saw the Benosa Adam, saw the women. Then later on, there might be a reference to masturbation in their story as well. And how are they destroyed? They're destroyed by a flood, water element, right? So that's the generation of the flood. Now, later on, you have the second patriarch, you have Yitzchak. You know, everybody loves, I ask whenever I'm in the crowds, I ask the girls, I said, you know, if you had to date one of the patriarchs, you had to date one of the Elvis, which one would you date?
Avram.
Everyone says Avram,
What?
right?
Of
Everyone
course.
says, because he's the guy, he's Mr. Social, he's the extrovert, come on in, come into my l'chaim.
Nice.
Right? But you know what? Does it ever say that Avram loved Sarah? Does it ever talk about their affection? You know, the girls don't want to date Yitzchak. We don't know that much about Yitzchak. Yitzchak's like this strong...
Very obscured, yeah.
Exactly. And yet, the first time we speak about a man loving a woman, love, is Yitzchak. Yitzchak loved Rivka. Yitzchak fell in love with Rivka when Rivka comes back. The first time we hear about intimacy, with the exception of Adam and Chava, when it says Vayeda Adam Eschaveshto, but the first time that we hear about intimacy, when we speak about it from the term of knowing, it's kind of a very parv term. What would be a sweeter, a more fun term? Misachik. A man is being misachik with his wife.
Laugh,
Yitzchak
right?
is
Laughter.
Yeah, playing around, right?
Playfulness,
Intimacy. Right? Yitzchak, right? The one who's rejected by all the ladies in my classes is actually the one who teaches us about loving a wife, who teaches about being misachik, about the playfulness, the beauty of marriage. It's Yitzchak, right? So and so much of stories of Yitzchak's always at wells, right? Every single story about Yitzchak is this well and that well, and he's stuffing up this well because he's water element, and therefore his whole thing is relationships. So on and so forth, and we continue. But I think your question is answered in the sense that the more that you understand the elements, the more you understand the inner turmoil that's going on, because we're all dealing with these four struggles all the time.
Wow. What's jumping out for me, this is something I recently discovered, that whenever I was looking for external factors, I would say, call it indulgence or whatever it may be, I started realizing a year back that I'm purely looking for connection, for relationships.
Yeah.
This past week I was like not in a great spot, and I called up my friend, one of my closest friends. I'm like, get here right now, we're chilling. And he literally came, slept over here till like 3 a.m. because that's what I'm craving, What's jumping out at me is that a different person, the earth person, I don't know if it would help if he calls up his best friend, like, I need you now. Maybe he needs like to chillax, maybe take a break, take a walk, do whatever relaxes that person.
That's right.
So not like in addition to what you were saying also, not only would it make a person successful, even in a bad spot, a person could like reorient himself and say, what do I need? Relationships. Maybe I need an intellect stimulus if a person's a wind, a fire. Let me get my passion back on. Let me keep on going to what speaks to me.
Know how to fill that element.
Exactly.
And by the way, there very often, even if let's say you come across, you're feeling some sort of physical temptation, right, towards a woman, and then something very interesting happens. If you actually have an opportunity, it's very interesting, right? Because so much, and again, we're in Israel, yeshiva guys. There's a lot of like yeshiva guy girl, drama. I had some seminary girls over at our Shabbos table Friday night, and just hearing about it, and there's a certain shallowness that surrounds that, and very often something fascinating happens when you have a conversation with someone, a real conversation, not like, flirtiness is so shallow, a real deep conversation, suddenly you feel very different about the person. Suddenly they're a real person. You're starting to feel a real genuine connection. And now you look back at the way you felt about this person when it was just like some sort of physical temptation, physical attraction, and you're like, I don't know what that was, but
Right.
this is something that's genuine, that's something that's real.
Wow.
So, it's really, these things are very close. There's a TED Talk, I don't know the exact details of it, but there's a TED Talk of a woman who was in some sort of business. It wasn't, quite like, prostitution, but it was something along the lines of service of services to males, something like that. And at a later stage in her life, when she was no longer doing this, and took maybe a little bit more of a respectable path, she spoke in a TED Talk, and she said, one thing that I can tell you about all of these men that I serviced in any way, and that is that I realized that they were just lonely. And really, they didn't want my physical attention. Really, they wanted somebody to love them. They just wanted affection. And they didn't even realize it. So it just expressed itself as just, lust.
Wow. Well, this is huge. I don't know. I'm just like thinking of your classic high school kid, and he's lost, and the guilt and the shame, and I'm an animal. And like, no, Gavalt, you're just looking for connection. You're looking for love. You're looking to be able to relate to one another.
Exactly. And it's a koach. And everything, we are, as I always remind my students, we are created b'tselem Elokim. We're created in the image of Hashem. That means everything that we have is there for a godly purpose. And it's just a matter of refining it. It's just a matter of channeling it. And it's just a matter of understanding. And again, that doesn't mean that knowing that means now suddenly we're all going to be, all in self-control, because we are here to be Bali Bechir. We are here to be strugglers. That's what we're here for. The motivating factor, when I sat down to write my first book, I didn't start out with the 4 elements. It wasn't the beginning. It wasn't my starting point. My starting point is, how do we find our mission in life? Wow. How do we find our mission? And I started out writing all the cliche stuff.
Such as?
You have to know, right, what are your talents and what are you good at and what are you passionate about, right? We live in a bit of a tricky society, because now like messaging has been like, your mission is like your job, whatever you're going to do for a living, right? So, my mission in life is to make music and put out an album. Like, that's maybe the cherry on the top. Mm-hmm. Really, the word that's found most in Sifrei Kabbalah about mission, you know what the word is? The word is tikkun.
Rectification.
Wow. What are we being misaking? Yeah. What's broken and who broke it? And did I break something that I have to fix? Of course I didn't, right? I'm put in this world with a tikkun.
Right.
That means that I'm here to fix some sort of brokenness that exists from before me. Did my parents break it? Did my grandparents? Well, let's look at the original breaking. What is the original breaking?
The Eitzadas.
Even before, that is certainly a breaking, but even before the Eitzadas, Kabbalah says when Hashem created the world was created through a process called Shvirat HaKelim, shattering of the vessels, a shattering. A creative process was done through a shattering. It seems like the opposite of creation. Because what was being created was a stage, a platform for us to be able to enter into and do something and matter. So we're here to pick up the pieces of something. We're put into a brokenness. The things that make you feel broken in your life, you didn't do that. Mm-hmm. That is the stage that you were put in, so you can struggle and you can sift through that. And yes, if you're picking up broken glass, you are going to get cut. Trust me, I've tried it many times. Right, every single time my kid knocks over a glass, right? Half the family is going to be just dripping blood after it's over. It's just the way it goes.
Bloodbath.
Right? If you go into, if you try to, get something valuable out of a dirty, disgusting pit, you're going to get dirty.
Yeah.
When I was young, I was my image of like what it means to be a struggler. So there used to be, I don't know if your audience, there used to be a series of movies called Die Hard. Bruce Willis. Okay, Bruce Willis was like, it was an action, one of these action movies. And Bruce Willis was this guy, like in the beginning of the movie, he always looked like polished, like glasses, button down shirt, cool guy.
Sharp guy.
And then like by the time the movie was over, he was like bloody, like half his face was ripped off. Exactly, And I'm like that's cool. Like that's what life is supposed to be. Like we're here to get dirty. We're here to, so the fact that we struggle with all of these elements, we didn't do that. Hashem put us there. And Hashem said, this is what you got to dance with. But when you understand it, and when you understand what it's there for, then you're so much more empowered. That's why I called it the 4 elements of an empowered life. you're so much more empowered to, to
You
deal
know
with
where
it.
you're going.
Yeah.
I was just speaking to a previous guest, Rabbi Yaakov Klein,
Yeah.
and you're familiar with him?
I am.
He's the best.
So good.
I know him. I know him. In fact, Yaakov Klein wrote an approbation on the second book.
Really?
Nice.
Freedom,
Oh,
yeah.
I study his book almost every day.
Yeah.
And he just sent me a 5-minute voice note. He was saying, we're here to struggle. People think I have my life set up. Here's where I'm going. This is my path, relationships, career-wise, stability. And then, shoot, challenge comes. There's a mess up. There's a bump of the road. And okay, can I just, smooth it out and get back to normal? He's like, no. We were fine before God has put us in the world, and we're going to be fine after we leave this world. We're here to struggle.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. And like you're saying, the knowledge of the 4 elements and tapping into who we are is not going to take away that struggle. It's just going to lead to empowerment of how to best resolve, deal, and struggle through those challenges.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. There's a great scene. Since we're talking about movie scenes, it's a great scene that I love. Did you ever watch? Maybe your audience watched. It's a cartoon. It's in Parab. We can talk about it. The Emperor's. What's it called? The Emperor's New Groove or something like that.
You're mad cool. I love that. You're
It's
just
like a
whipping out.
Disney. It's like a Disney cartoon. Anyhow, whatever it is, there's this one scene
We're very
where
sheltered.
somehow they're going down. It's like they fell off a cliff or something like that, and somehow they got entangled on some sort of log, and it's going downstream, and they're tied onto it. And one person is sort of facing downstream, so he sees everything that's going on, and the other one has his back towards him, so he doesn't see. He's moving backwards, and he doesn't see what's coming up ahead. So the one who's looking ahead suddenly is like, uh-oh, and the one facing whose back is facing him, he's like, don't tell me there's a drop coming. And he's like, yeah, there's a drop coming.
Yeah,
He's
buddy.
like, does it look like the sharp rocks on the other end? He's like, I think so.
Uh-huh.
And then there's this pause for a second, and then the one who's facing back, he's like, bring it on. And then they
Nice.
go crashing down.
Wow.
So I always have that scene in my head, and it's just when you see there's something hard coming, bring it on.
Get
the
the
ASMR
courage.
is coming,
Let's go.
bring it on. And you
Wow.
know what? There's something thrilling about the moment, the day after, when you wake up and you feel down and you feel shame and you feel guilty because maybe you look back at yesterday and you didn't like it, and you look in the mirror and you say to yourself, Buxbaum, bring it on. That's it.
Let's go.
The day's new. Hischanchos. Start again. And you know what? By the time I go to sleep tonight, I'm going to be even greater than I was before. Because you know what the Yetzer Hara wants? You know what the evil inclination wants? It wants me to just be in a rut all day and feel bad about myself. And I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to be even stronger today.
It's such a warrior mentality. It's epic. I love
Yeah.
that.
It is. Yeah, talk about empowerment.
Yeah, really.
By the way, what's jumping out for me right now is that the evil inclination could use that earth element of just staying saturated in a certain spot and use that when a person's in not a great spot, just stay there and go deeper and deeper. And sometimes we need that smack, that give me that fire back, give me that passion. I'm flipping Arnie Sova, you know what I'm saying? It's I low-key forgot about that.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And therefore, that's why Avram Avinu is earth element. Avram Avinu, because Avram Avinu is Zrizas. That's the whole thing of Zrizas. We're introduced to Avram Avinu. We see Avram Avinu's chesed, right? When the malachim, when the angels come to his tent. And look how many times it says in that story. What does it say over there? It says, Vayimahir, he ran here, and he hurried this one up, and it's he's frantic, Avram, come on,
Chillax.
yes, exactly. So Rashi gives us a little bit of a hint. You can miss it. Rashi tells us one thing that helps us understand what was going on. Rashi gives us the date of that event. When was it? When was that going on? It was going on Leil Pesach, the night of Pesach. Fast forward, whatever 100 years, right, later, that same night, the Jewish people are going out of Mitzrayim. And how are they going to go out?
Hurried.
B'chipazon, in a
Nice.
rush. Right? Because Mitzrayim is about stuckness. Mitzrayim is Meitzarim, constraint,
Make
like
that
you
move
said.
and
I'm
run for your
stuck.
life.
And the very first step of leaving Egypt, that's element number one. That's Vahotzesi. That's the first term of redemption, is leaving Egypt, getting unstuck. And in order to get unstuck, it's got to be with Zrizas.
Yeah.
You can't get out of bed. You're stuck and you're depressed and you're there in your covers. And you're like, I hate this world and why do I want to get out of bed? And today's going to suck. And then you're like, Zrizas. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Bang.
Bang. I'm out.
Wow.
And you push yourself. You don't even think about it. That is elevating the earth element. That's the trait of Avram Avinu. That's the first step of leaving Mitzrayim.
Wow.
And by the way, let me just add
Yeah.
just add one more thing. We spoke earlier. We said that who's the flaw? Who's the personification of the flaw of the earth element?
Cain.
Cain and Hevel. What was their argument over? Each one of them brought a sacrifice, right? The Medrash says, what sacrifice were they bringing? Medrash says the sacrifice they were bringing was the Korban Pesach. That means that event also happened on Pesach night.
Wow.
Cain created this flaw specifically on that night, and Avraham Avinu and the Jewish people rectified that flaw on that night.
Wow.
Tikkun, wow.
Wow. We don't even know. Something else that Rabbi Yaakov Khan was speaking to me about before we started our podcast. Well, Mo was, as usual, setting up the logistics. Shout out over there.
Let's go.
He was saying also, like, we're reincarnated 9 times over. I'm saying you're well-versed in esoteric concepts. Like, you could actually break down how many times, but I'm a Gilgul reincarnation from 8 generations ago. So, like, yeah, it could very well be that if I have a certain tendency towards one of the elements, that because, like you just mentioned before,
It might be there, exactly.
that's what I'm rectifying, you know?
Yeah.
Do you think, I love everything you're saying so much.
Thank you.
A lot. Do you think that there's a benefit of knowing if somebody's in a relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship, platonic, or a friendship, do you think that there's a benefit of knowing the other person's core element as well?
I think it's great. I think we always need to be careful not to put people in boxes in general, but it's good, like everything else. Yes, be aware of it, try to understand it, but I think it's a little bit overkill to be like, oh, well, you're like if you're in the middle of a fight with your wife, like I wouldn't bring up, like I wouldn't tell my wife, like,
Yeah, well, that's because you're an earth element, of course.
Classic earth move.
Obviously, you're going to do that.
Yo, Earth is getting a lot of spotlight on this podcast. I want to talk about water, but whatever.
No,
Yeah.
I think because
like-
it sounded the most negative from
Again,
the bat.
but in
it's not.
general, like when you're a therapist, right, you can't use that and start like psychoanalyzing your wife and kids. It just doesn't go over well. So yes, the answer is it's good to understand people that way.
Not productive to label.
But again, we always have to let people, be who they are, and also.
Do you think that would be self-reflective as well? Meaning that even if I identify with the water element, to give myself space, that I also have the fire element, that I also have parts of me that are earthly.
Yeah, and it's also good. It's good to work on the elements that you are weaker in. It's also good to work on those as well.
I was gonna ask you, what's the balance in that?
Yeah, so you want to know what you're good at, but you also want to know where you need to strengthen or where you need to supplement. So if you're running an organization and you are a fire or a wind element person, you want an earth element person alongside you. And if you realize that you're fire and they're wind, and therefore, listen, I'm tough. I have a fire personality. I want things done I'm passionate. I'm going to push this company forward. I'm a self-starter. I'm going to take risks, right? And I might even get in people's face. Fire people could be much more confrontational. But now if I have an earth element there, so either I'll tear this person apart if I don't recognize that I'm a fire and I don't recognize that they're an earth. But if we recognize that and we accept each other for that, then earth element, I need you because you're going to bring me back down to earth. You're going to give me that stability.
Wow.
And then I know when I'm thinking too out of the box, I need to hear your perspective. So, a fire element couldn't be the type of person that it's my way or the highway. And therefore, it's good to know that and good to say, you know what? I am accepting on myself to be open to other people's perspectives, even though I'm a fire element and even though it's not going to make any sense to me, but I realize that I need to do that.
Wow.
So there you're working on a wind element needs to work. You have to have some earth element, right? You have to have some stability. Going back, the reason why a wind element, the reason why, the reason why I don't want to be all over the map, right? Yes, when I started learning Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, I wanted to become a Breslover Chassid, and when I saw this and I'm like, oh, maybe I should move to Tzfat, maybe I should move to Thailand, right? Maybe I want to, trust me, the crazy things that I considered. But the question is, there has to be certain stability. So what are the things that what is the stability that I'm going to commit to, even though it doesn't come natural to me? Because too much wind is too all over the place.
Wow.
What happens when two individuals are the same elements, like let's say husband and wife, or any other relationship, such as a employee and a boss, or partners? What does that look like if they're I don't know if it even clashes, but if there's two people that are very similar elements.
If they're kind of a little bit towards the middle of things and they're like parav on the elements or slightly, then they can get away with it. If they're extreme, then they really need to be very, very aware of how that plays out, and then they need to take the steps to modify that. No relationship is ever over.
Right.
I wouldn't say it can't work. Anything could work, but you got to figure out what the tools are to make it work.
Right. Maybe have a third person being able to mediate that. What's the difference between following after, again, being able to empower oneself with knowing your element and following that and taking lead? So again, for me, water, going after relationships, building on that, and really spending a lot of time and mental energy on that. And then you referenced balancing it out also, having somebody there that could ground you and have stability. Where does it come into contrast, the difference between like shutting down what naturally speaks to me, but also hearing what another person has to say and taking that into consideration?
I think that as you go through, assume you want to ride your element as much as you could. Your water element. That means that probably for the most part, right, you know that you're going to thrive. You need to have those social connections, and you're probably going to do things in life that are social, and they're going to give you, right? So you know that about yourself, and that's great. That's wonderful. Life is the greatest teacher, and life will teach you where you need to put extra emphasis. And at a certain point in time, maybe, in Hashem's sense of humor, Hashem will pair you with someone where maybe that water element needs to, my wife and I, where my wife is much more of a water element, and therefore she's more of a people pleaser, and she thrives because people love her because she is a lovely, lovely person. And there are times that as a wind element, I feel that, in order for our shalom bayis to work, she has to often pull me into her water world, and I have to pull her into my wind world for us to make it work. Our relationships become our teachers, and the things that are going wrong in our life, and you're like, why is this going wrong? Well, maybe I need a little bit more. So life will teach us that.
It's a lot of mindfulness, like we speak about a lot on this podcast, a lot of being aware and being in touch with what's going on in the day-to-day as well.
That's it.
I love that.
So much of what we're here to do is just to become much more, self-aware. Like a story that I like to mushel, an anecdote that I like to give all the time.
You love that word, Aryeh.
Anecdote.
Is anecdote. So an anecdote that I like to give all the time is you have a father who's tasked with the daunting task of watching their child because their wife is out. Let's say, a 5-year-old child. When I used to say the story, I used to say babysit, and every single time you say a father babysitting their kid, you get dirty looks from the women. So now I already know that you never refer to watching your kid as babysitting.
What's the negative connotation behind that?
Because it's your kid. So you don't babysit your kid.
Right, I'm watching my kid.
You're a father.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay, it's good. That is totally fair that you asked it. I'm glad that we clarified this now.
Goes your shidduchim. Okay.
Exactly.
We might have to cut it out. I didn't know it was that
this
bad.
This actually may have been the most important moment in this podcast.
Clip that.
Don't worry, ladies. He now knows. So he's sitting there and he's trying to get, dads often try to get, some work done or watch football games, while they're supposed to be. And the kid is nagging. The kid is like, So the father's thinking, how can I just buy myself, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? So he takes a magazine, he flips through the magazine, and he sees there's a picture of a globe. So he says, you know what? My kid doesn't know geography. This will be fun for him. He rips out the picture of the globe, rips it up into a bunch of pieces, gives his kid the pieces and some scotch tape and says, tape it back together. And when you tape it back together, then I'm going to play with you, right? So he figures, I have to buy myself, at least 10 minutes now. He does not learning geography in preschool. Kid comes back 2 minutes later with the thing perfectly taped together. Just are you a genius? How did you know? So the kid holds up the paper, flips it to the other side, and there was a picture of a person on the other side. Every kid could recognize how to put together a person. He knows, the face and mouth goes here. And so the kid says, I put the person together and the world just fell into place. So the idea behind it is we're here to put the person together. Don't save the world, right? Realize that the tikkun that you need is inside of you. The world is just there to be your stage, right? You don't go to when you go to the gym to work on these exercise equipment, right? So the purpose of the exercise equipment is to make you a stronger person. The world is a gym. And that's it. And every encounter that you have is there so that after 120, you could return your neshama, your piece of the puzzle. You give it back to Hashem and you say, this is the neshama that you gave me. Look how it looks. Check it out. This is what I accomplished. That's your piece of the puzzle. It's the neshama that you're developing inside.
I just want to go back to the previous conversation that we had. about we're literally here just to struggle. Why is that true? Like, if we're not struggling, are we beating the life? Or if we are struggling, we're just living life? Like, what does that mean? Why does Hashem put us in the world to struggle?
What's the purpose of it all?
Yeah, to struggle it's the ultimate godliness. It's the ultimate elokus. And the greatest proof of that is just the amazing, amazing feeling that we have. You know, if you pick any segment, any window of your life, and you really look back at the struggles that you had during that time and how you navigated through it and how you accomplished, and the feeling that you have towards that versus the things that came easy to you. I mean, people that struggle are the all-stars of the world. You know, we couldn't have this conversation. I couldn't be effective as a teacher, as a father, as a husband, if it wasn't for my struggles. And as much as I hated them during the time, and as much as I really I hate the struggles that I have now, and I don't understand them, and they're a mystery. But I know that it's probably the very, very same things that are bringing me down are really the things that are making me shine. So it's really the struggles, that's what's going to make us thrive. And ultimately, that's going to give us the greatest simcha, the greatest joy is going to be from our ability to navigate through that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have closure. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're somehow going to look back at your struggles now 10 years down the line and be like, oh, I aced that one, right? That's not, we don't, sometimes we get that closure, but we don't always get that closure. But we are definitely all in a position that we could look back and we could say, but I'm a better person today, and I'm a stronger person, and I can influence the world better because I went through that.
I love that, but at the same time, it's bothering me because it's very easy to say that about the day-to-day things, the small things that we're struggling with, getting up in the morning, even though that's huge. But all these small things that we're fighting day-to-day, but let's say a parent dying, or your parents get divorced, you get divorced, whatever it is. Like
something traumatic.
Yeah, something super traumatic. You get in a car, whatever it is. How, obviously you're not getting closure, but how could you even look at that as positive?
Well, I mean, it's hard to speak about sorrows and challenges that I've never been through. And you know, I have a difficult time speaking about people who lost loved ones because I never went through that. So, but I have observed people who have lost loved ones, and the depth of their neshama and what they were able to do with that and how they were able to harness that pain. Pain can really, really fuel you. So you're right. The closure is not going to be, oh, now I get it. Right?
Happened for a reason.
Yes. So like
know the reason.
that pain will never go away, but that pain will also be the fuel. I did grow up in somewhat of a shaky home family wise, and it added to the depth of my personality. It added to the sensitivity. I have a beautiful, beautiful relationship with my children. And I don't know that I would have had the same level of relationship had I not gone through the things that I did. So I think, listen, does it work for everyone? Obviously, if a person is going through terrible pain, you need to have the right influences. You need to have the right guidance. Someone has to carry you through it. Otherwise, you might be, 80 and you're in therapy because you never worked that through. That is a frightening reality. But hopefully everyone will have the opportunity. And again, for people that are listening and for people that know, if you're carrying that pain, you need to have the right structure to work that through. Because if you work it through in a healthy way, then it can actually be the fuel to make you an even deeper person. And if you leave it untouched, or if you just try to, sweep it under the carpet, then it pops out in all sorts of, dark ways.
Mm. Yeah, I hear that. Nice.
Let's end on a happy note.
Yeah, just to wrap up. I mean, we covered a lot of topics. We went into many different areas, starting off with the 4 elements, breaking down each one, different Torah personalities that resembled each one, the importance of why it's significant to tap into which element most resonates with you, to take advantage of those, to chase those, and also to really work on the ones that we may be weaker at in our relationships as well, to be very cognizant of the people that we're interacting, maybe I need an earth person to balance my water out, or maybe the opposite. Maybe I need somebody who's intellect, more driven. And then obviously speaking about an age-old question of why do bad things happen to good people, and really trying to bring it home, not so much philosophically, but we might not never know, but really to be able to work through it, and that will ultimately make us great.
Yeah.
Any last words to our audiences? I mean, I'm absolutely blown away, but
Well,
a final parting message.
I would say like this, that we'll talk about the 4 elements of inner freedom and the 4 steps of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So the Jewish people leave, that's earth element, they leave Bezrizas. And then they have to cross the Yam Suf, they have to cross the sea. That's a water element experience. And in fact, right before they cross the sea, do you know what happens right before? Hashem takes them on a little sivuv, a little circuitous route. Do you know where they end up? They end up camping in front of an idol at a location called Pi Hachiros, in front of an idol called Baal Tzifon. Rashi tells us a little bit about the location of that. What was it? It was a rock formation that looked like male and female. So therefore, Mitzrayim, they look at this rock formation, they're like, male and female, clearly we know what the gods want us to do here. Get it on, right? Music festival, whatever it is. Exactly. So Hashem says, is this what you want? Is this what you want? You want it to be party time? If that's what you think freedom is about, you can party, but I got a whole Egyptian army waiting to take you back, if that's what you want.
Wow.
Or you can overcome that, and you can move forward. And if you're ready to move forward, I will split the sea for you. I will make the water element something totally different. And the Jewish people move forward and they go into the sea. And what do? They have the real music festival in the water. That's Az Yasher.
Wow.
And that's the elevation of the water element. And then ultimately, then they come out. And then Hashem says, okay, now it's time for wind element. Bring on, and there's so much over there. A lot happens there. We won't go into the mun, and we won't go. But let's go into Amalek, or it's coming up to Purim soon, right? Amalek. What is Amalek? Amalek is doubt. I don't know if
Suffolk.
Yeah, Amalek is Suffolk. It's Gematria Suffolk, and it's Gematria El Acher, other gods. I don't know if you were at the meal Shabbos day when we were discussing Amalek, right?
But academia.
Exactly. What is Amalek? Amalek is academics. Amalek is trying just to confuse you. And the Jewish people overcome that. They win the war against Amalek. And now they come to Har Sinai, and Har Sinai is Boer Ba'esh. It's burning with fire. Nice. Fire element. And Hashem says, now you're ready. If you want true greatness, you want true fire element, V'atem tiuli mamlechas kohanim v'goy kadosh. But you have to let go of your ego. Parcha nishmasa, right? The Jewish people, their soul elevates itself completely, this total out-of-body experience. So it's this journey that we're going to, and it's a step-by-step journey. And I think that the truth is in our own life also that we need to realize that the next step in our journey is always unfolding. Like I said, my first book was about finding your mission. And people love talks that are like, how to define your mission, how to accomplish how to know what your mission in life is. None of us will ever know what our mission in life is. But there is something that you might know. You might know what your mission is today. You might know what your mission is tomorrow. Hashem opens up the door to whatever the next step is. Whatever you need to do next, that's the door that's open. So that's the question that we want to ask ourselves, and always be open to the possibility. We have many, many missions in this life. We always have to ask ourselves, what's the next thing? What's the next big thing in my life, and what's my next mission?
Wow.
So it's l'chaim to that, right?
L'chaim,
We should be zocha. We should be zocha to always
empty
have clarity.
Cup, we could share. L'chaim, baby.
Thank you, and hatzlacha to you. This is an amazing initiative that you guys.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
So much hatzlacha.
Absolute pleasure.
Beautiful.